and welcome to Stash Chats. I can't believe it. Feels like it's been ages, but it was only just last week when I didn't do an episode. So last week, Doug and I went to York to visit my lovely sewing friend Natalie there. And yeah, we had a really nice time last week. I even finished my latest blouse. So Meg will recognise this fabric. So I'm going to have Meg on today. So Meg runs Pigeon Wishes with her husband, and they are an amazing fabric wholesaler. They've got such a fun and unique style, which I'm really interested to hear more about. They also make buttons that are really fun. So I'm wearing my jacket that Meg shared on their post today, showcasing some of my lovely big buttons. You can't beat some statement notions in my book. So yeah, we're just going to hang out, have a lovely little chat and learn a bit more about Meg and her sewing journey. So do say hi in the chat and let us know where you're joining from, if you're doing any sewing whilst you're watching along. I can see Mel's already joined, so hello Mel. And yeah, let's crack on with the Stash Chat. Let's get Meg into the studio.
Hi. Hiya.
Thanks for joining us on Stash Chats.
Oh no, thanks for asking me.
So do you want to just, hi Jan, we've got a few more people joining still, but do you want to just kick us off with a little bit about yourself? Yeah, about what is Pigeon Wishes? What do you like to sew?
Hi, so my name is Meg, and before I started Pigeon Wishes, I was, home sewer, home seamstress. I am mostly self-taught. I have gone on kind of courses for pattern cutting, pattern drafting, done tailoring and stuff like that. But my journey really started just after university when, I don't know, a little depressed, a bit lost, working a job I didn't really like, and I wanted a creative outlet. Like at the end of the day, I just wanted to come home, and instead of like just doing nothing, watching TV or something like that, I wanted to find something fulfilling to do in my evenings. So I was gonna like try and do art, painting, drawing, but someone was like, no, I don't think that's for you. In a nice way. They were just like, I think sewing is going to be something you'll actually really like and stick with. So I started just looking up sewing online, and I feel like sewing has been having so many resurgence. Like the latest one was over lockdown, but the one I started sewing with was blogging, the blogging days, and kind of it was for people who liked vintage clothes and wanted to make them themselves. It was like a really different scene. So it was Gertie, if people know Gertie, and it was very 1950s dresses and things like that, and there was lots and lots of blogging, and that was like really the way you got information about sewing and new patterns and everything like that. Gosh, 11 years ago. And that's when I started sewing, and I started sewing with By Hand London. They were the first sewing pattern company I really like felt an affinity with. I think they were the most modern at the time. Like I said, it was very vintage inclined, and they were the most modern pattern company on the scene at that time. So I started out really ambitious. I thought I was going to sew my wedding dress. I had like a year.
Just right, like beginners are insane. They just got it. They just think, oh,
Like,
let's go.
I think it was less than a year. I think it was like 9 months, and I really did think I would go in with like this couture like piece. I don't know. It didn't work out quite that way. I think I made a skirt. It was a By Hand London skirt, and I was doing the zip, and I didn't realize I needed a zipper foot. So like an invisible zipper foot. And it was just really bad. And even I know as I was doing it, it was like coming together, but like really badly. So I had to go back to the beginning, and kind of I did a course at my local community college that was like 8 weeks, and even that was like the wrong course because that was pattern drafting, and I didn't even know how to sew, so I was like learning how to pattern draft. So I had to go back again, and kind
you just had all these pieces of paper, and you're like, well, now what do I do?
I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, let's pattern draft a shirt.
Oh my.
I don't know how to like barely like there with sewing a straight line, but come on, let's go full on with like, you know, doing a made to measure thing. But it was a really interesting course, and it, you know, it didn't dull my love for sewing. It could have like gone either way. It could have just been awful, and I was like, no, this is not for me. But it really was like, oh wow, I can actually make things that fit myself. I can kind of change things around. During that time, Burda Style was also one of the biggest websites you can go on, and they had this really helpful like line by line how you can pattern draft, and that was brilliant. Yeah, so I just kind of muddled my way through, and just, you know, learned more and sewed more, and then I started a business, Pigeon Wishes. So that started off again like that was 5 years ago. So I've been sewing for about 5 years, and I was wanting like a career change and doing something I love that was a bit more flexible. I had an operation and quite some chronic illness issues, so it's just a lot better for me if I could be able to work for myself. And my husband was very, very supportive. And it first started off as a little fabric shop on Etsy. And then I realized that like I was finding all of these unique sources because I travel around to source the fabric. So I was like, actually, I want to focus more on wholesale. So we started to do that. And then we added the buttons because I found a lovely, lovely laser cutting studio, like a small family business as well, that they do laser cutting, and we work with them to create our buttons. And yeah, it's kind of blossomed from there. We still do a bit of everything. I think if you start a business, it's good to have multiple streams of income. So we do a little bit of retail still, we do wholesale, we do our buttons, we do a printing service, we sell bolting boards. Not a lot of people know this.
You've got your bolting machine as well, haven't
We have
you?
a bolt machine, we bolt fabric for people. I mean, we do have like a lot of things because it's me and my husband. We both run it. So like we kind of like juggle everything together. I mean, the love of fabric really like started the business, as they say, like you start sewing and then you start buying fabric. And then it's two separate loves.
So was your own stash growing quite a lot before you were like, actually, this needs to be a shop?
No, it wasn't that fun. No, I have seen some people, I was like, oh, this might as well be a shop. But no, I've always lived in like quite small places. I think that's what held me back. If I was living in London at the time, like, you know, it was a small space that I was trying to contain my hobby in. It was like a corner of my room. So I could never let my stash get that big. It was always like kind of manageable. I think the thing that drove it, it's less so now, but there was really a lack of, I would say, kind of like more contemporary fabric on the scene. I know there's a lot of shops now that have opened up, and it was a gap. But before, you got so much quilting cotton. I mean, when I started sewing, quilting cotton was, you know, queen. It was like the most fabric shops sold that. Dressmaking fabric, you could go to markets, but you know the quality varied. It was quite difficult to have like an online space that was like really great and really trusted. Now it's kind of like a lot different, and it's amazing like the fabric you can get. But definitely, it's interesting to see that evolution of just quilting cotton and maybe the odd dressmaking things here, and seeing how dressmaking has really taken off as a craft that is so loved, and there's so much more fabric choices.
Yeah. So Tanya said that she started sewing at the same time as you, and it was lots of Mad Men dresses on all the
Yeah.
blogs. Now you can basically make anything, right? Like you could make whatever you want. If you see something in the shop, it's like, oh, I can make that. I can make that. Oh, I can make that. And you go home, you don't buy anything.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that the alignment between fashion trends and sewing trends is so much bigger now. Like before, it really felt like, I remember when closet core fabric patterns. So when she released her jean pattern, it was like Like everyone was like amazed. It was like, oh, I can sew jeans. And now it's like just such a common thing where it's like, yeah, I can sew jeans, I can sew a jacket, I can sew a coat. Like, oh, this Garni top, I really love it. And then there's the
I've
pattern.
seen so many of those.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I really love Garni. Oh, look, oh, here's the pattern. Like before, where it used to be just so much of a yeah, I think it was just a lot fewer options, and now it seems like everything is really at your fingertips.
Yeah. And I think as well now, like there's less of the like vintage vibes, like
Mm.
in the clothes themselves, but also in like the vibe of it as a hobby. Like it's not
Mhm.
so much like, oh, this is like a homely thing to do. You do this because you're old fashioned. Now it's like I'm actually like groundbreaking. I'm looking to the future. This is more sustainable to make my own clothes. Like I'm doing self-care by
Mm.
having a hobby I enjoy. Like there's, I think it's a lot more appreciated, like the benefits of it, and it's less of like a sort of quirky girl hobby, more like something really exciting. That's and just seeing the community grow, even like over the last few years, has been really exciting.
It has, it really has. Like I always thought, oh, you know, it's reached its peak now. Like how many more people are going to be dressmaking? But you know, over lockdown and even with TikTok and things like that. And I think it's more like everyday wear things. I remember like when I first started sewing, it was like occasional things. Like you're making a special dress, you're making something, you know, for like a nice occasion, like a picnic. But now it's like, no, these are making things for every day, and I want a homemade handmade wardrobe for just as a way of living, which is lovely.
Yeah. Well, there, did you see recently there was like a zero point 0.1 second clip of Taylor Swift doing some sewing? So there'll probably
Oh,
be like
really?
1 billion new sewists in the community next week.
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that. But yeah, it's amazing to see like so many younger people as well. Because I think when I started sewing, it was mostly people around like my age getting back into it again, which was like around like 20s, mid 20s, late 20s. But now it's really kind of like taken off in like really like young kids, like 10 and like teenage, and just like sewing, crocheting, like everything. They're doing all of it. It's amazing to see.
I feel like the blog phenomenon is
Mm.
like such a localized point in time, because I've recently been rewatching like the BBC Sherlock series, and like a
Oh
whole part of
yeah,
that is that John writes the blog, and I'm like, no, like this is so 10 years ago, like
I
when
know.
everyone has a blog.
I don't know. One no one knows. Like it would be like more realistic if we had a podcast. Like it
I
was like.
know. I was like, imagine if John's trying to make TikToks about every murder. Um, but yeah, I want to just talk about like the style of Pigeon Wishes, because like I'm really impressed by like Pigeon Wishes being so like popular as a wholesaler. Like I don't know any fabric wholesalers, but when you see a fabric and then it's like, oh, that looks Pigeon Wishesy, and oh yeah, this is, you know, I mean, I think it helps that the brands will say sourced by Pigeon Wishes.
Yeah.
But I think yeah, like a wholesale, it can be quite, it's like a sort of middleman role that can sort of just disappear. So
Mm.
did you have like a vision of like, this is the style, that this is the mood board, we want, you know, bright, quirky, modern, these things, or do you just pick the things that you like and that sort of all comes together as like the Pigeon Wishes style?
I mean, it's definitely been amazing how supportive fabric shops, especially, are when it comes to naming that they source their fabric from us. That's amazing. But I think it really came. The sourcing came from my love for the sewing community, and I was thinking of things that they would really love. And I love it when I see a print and I'm like, oh, this person would love this print. This person would love that. I mean, we try and source a lot of dead stock, so it's always up in the air about what we're going to get, but we generally try and pick things that are a bit different, that's on the market already. Something with a print that we know people like, natural fibers. It's really trying to nail down what we can see people really gravitating towards. Like right now, people are really loving linen and linen prints, and you know, things like that. It's a little bit difficult because when you source dead stock, you just don't know. You really don't know. But we do try and have a certain style. And when it comes to wholesaling, like so many wholesalers are like a multi-generational business, and they're still quite old school, and they're just like incredibly big, so they don't need to do that kind of marketing. Where we're trying to come into this business as like really 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 new. Like the wholesale business is really kind of like an old boys club. Like it's very kind of masculine. Kind of, I don't know, it's one of those like things where like there's not a lot of women who kind of like own their wholesale business. Maybe they're employees, but I think we really had to kind of set ourselves apart with social media to get people to find us. So that's really nice.
Do you find it helps with like connecting to like female-led like businesses, like fabric shops? And also I feel like the sewing community's got like quite largely women as well. So really like being part of that community and like knowing what everyone likes. Do you find that that's really helped like bring you into the community as well as a business?
I think it has, because a lot of the people, especially the designers that we work with, they are like women owned and women led, and I definitely think they can feel the back and forth, and especially because we wanted to bridge that gap where it's new businesses. So one of the things we saw when it came to wholesaling is people had like huge minimums, like the minimums were like massive. And if you're a new business, if you're a sewing shop, if you're like a new designer, there's no way you need to buy 100 meters of fabric. It's just like not needed. So having kind of like that insight about starting a business when you are smaller, that helps, having that communication as well with other female-owned businesses. I think that all definitely helps. I think it's kind of like coming from someone kind of from the same generation also as well, because like I think some of the people who you talk to can be a little bit dismissive, a little bit like, oh, you're a small woman, a bit like bit patronizing kind of thing. So
business going.
yeah. So it's nice. So it's nice. It's like, no, you've just started, but you're growing. So it's nice to like speak to someone who can understand the challenges of what it is to try and put everything into your own business. Because a lot of businesses we work with, this is a real passion, not just a passion project, but they're funding it themselves. Like this is not like big corporate. We don't work with like big companies. We work with small to medium sized companies, so it feels more of a risk. So it's nice to talk to people who can kind of like a bit more understanding and not so pushy, salesy, and kind of like want the best for you. Because at the end of the day, like the better it is for the businesses we work with, the better it is for us. And
you're all in the same boat in a way.
Yeah. But we have picked fabrics that have just like I've really loved and like no one else has. So we did start with where I'm like, yeah, I really love that. But then I think we had to be a bit more strategic.
Yeah. I guess as well, you could end up with like everything's like the same if you've got a really
yeah, exactly. That is actually the problem. So my husband Yuhao, who works for the business with me, at first I never let him pick fabric because I was like, I just don't like anything you're choosing. But I have, and you know what? Some of them have been real winners. Like I have to say, and I'm like, actually, yeah, no, that is nice. It was just not my style. But yeah, I can really see like why.
Do you have like, if you end up picking like each picking fabrics, do you have a kind of friendly competition to see whose fabric's going to be the most popular?
No. No, but if there's a fabric that hasn't sold that one of us has picked, we'll remember who picked it and be like, still there. I know, but that fabric you picked, like, no, still there too.
Oh, that's funny. How do you find it like working together as a couple? Because I get this question a lot, because obviously Doug and I work together. But do you find that it's like added a new dimension to your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, it has to, hasn't it? Because like, gosh, you spend so much time together. It has. It's nice because it's. I think maybe it's the same with you, that you have like different sets of skills and you manage different things, and obviously you have to come together sometimes. Um, but I don't know, that separation. Like we don't get bored. Like there's always something to talk about. Like it's hard to not talk about the business. I think that's the only thing that I would say is like, yeah, we now mostly talk about the business with each other, even when we're not working, and it's a struggle to kind of switch off our mind and like not talk about the business. But even before we started it, we used to love, like, he hates watching TV, but like the one program we used to watch together was The Apprentice. Like, and it's nothing like watching a business, but like it's not like we do like having those conversations about growth and this and that. And he handles logistics, which I hate, and I handle marketing, which he doesn't like so much. So yeah, it's a weird one because I can't imagine doing it with anyone but him. Obviously, it's hard, like when you butt heads about something, or he works in a completely different style than I do. But no, it's kind of like, yeah,
It's quite interesting to like see that other side of your partner, because like I think to see them in the sort of business mode, I find is like quite different. And I think it's been interesting like for Doug as well, because I think we've had to really like work on our communication between each other, because I am like, I can respond quite badly to negative feedback.
yeah,
I'll take it quite personally, especially from him. So he's really had to work on being like, this is some constructive criticism. And it's been quite interesting, like to have those opportunities, like where that has to come up, because it's not really something that you tend to face. Like, I don't know, I think just casually, like in normal life, it's not, it's a bit like, you don't really get that situation.
It's weird. So when we started the business, like, our business really came along when I had just given birth to Olimi, our son. So it was really weird because I think parenting was much more of a clash. Like, because like I was like, oh, we never argue. Like, we never used to really argue. And I was like, oh, we must just be one of those couples that just doesn't argue. Um, but it was like, no, there was nothing that we really had to kind of like collaborate fully together on. So I feel like because the business came with like Olimi and our child, um, it felt like it was more of a like a difference of parenting styles, and like the business kind of came secondary, and we kind of are quite similar in our thinking towards the business, or like in where we had to learn and develop. So it never felt like that. Felt like a bigger,
The business was your like common ground. That was
yeah.
the
Yeah. So it was like it was, the first year it was like having the business and having a new baby, and I think it was, yeah, it was a lot, but it didn't, I suppose we got through it.
yeah. Still going, still married, still got the business.
Yeah, I still have the baby.
Did you find that changed the business a lot, having Olimi, that you have to like travel less? And then obviously then there was the pandemic, so
Oh
did
god, yeah. I
also.
mean, the pandemic was what really um halted the business, because with Olimi was a great travel. Like, what most people don't really tell you is it's like great traveling with a newborn, or like, so it's like someone under one, because like they sleep a lot, and during the plane ride, like they sleep. I was just breastfeeding and then asleep, and like that was fine. I think the pandemic really changed things around, because logistics was just a nightmare during the pandemic. Travel was a nightmare during the pandemic. So no, we didn't travel less with him. What was the most difficult thing? I'm just really grateful, actually, because I know some people, like when I was in my little mum groups, some people were just so sad about having to go to work, and there was like a little countdown in their mind to when they were going back to work. But I was kind of I didn't take a maternity leave really. I just kept on going, and it didn't feel like work because it was like building the business that I really loved and enjoyed. So it was so nice, and it was so flexible. Like I didn't have to answer to anybody. If I wanted to work like in the middle of the night, I could. If I wanted to work here, I could. It was great. No, it's great. I think that's one of the best things about having your own business and, you know, being a parent is you can really set those times for yourself.
Yeah, that's really exciting that you've managed to like create a business that you're enjoying running so much. So we had a question from Mel about the buttons and what drew you to the buttons.
So that was Coco Wawa. She released this pattern. Oh gosh, I can't remember what it's called. Should I quickly do a Google? It's really specific. It wasn't like it just didn't come from anywhere. It was like literally a pattern, and I never made it in the end, which is the saddest like thing. So because I was breastfeeding at the time, so the buttons came around the first year of the business. So everything I was making, it had to be breastfeeding friendly. So I'm looking down, I'm just trying to find the pattern. Okay. And Coco Wawa just released a pattern called the Maple Dress. And that had 4 large buttons on it. I think they're 25 millimeters, which is why we started with our 25 millimeter buttons. And I was planning it, and I was just like, there are no good buttons. There's no, like, I didn't want, you know, the wooden buttons. I was like, no, I want something like a lot nicer than that. And that's when I started thinking about doing buttons, because everything in my mind for breastfeeding and for sewing had buttons right at the front you'd have to undo and do up again. So that's really where like the idea started.
Yeah, I love the button range. Like the colors are just too good. I mentioned I'm wearing my kaleidoscope jacket today. I thought I'd get it out for the occasion.
Oh, no, they just I didn't think there'd be anything. I thought they would just be like a really, I didn't even think people would really be too interested in them. That was a surprise. No, I love doing those, and I love doing the collections for them and picking out the colors and having the theme of them and thinking about what is missing or what people are making, and that's popular, and I love them. Yeah.
The possibilities are kind of endless in a way as well, because you've got all the different combinations and of all the colors and different sizes and different shapes. It's really exciting.
Yeah, and that's why I love collaborating with people as well, because as you said, like you have your own style, and then kind of sometimes it's hard to step out of the box with that. So like when you go to someone new and you're like, what kind of buttons would you design? Like what would you be your perfect button? And then they just come up with something I just never would have thought of. I love that as well. Like that's my favorite thing that's come out of the buttons, is like the collaborations as well.
Well, who was the designer that you collaborated with, the French buttons in the little box?
Yes,
So
Elaine. Oh, La Petite Maison Couture. Those ones were made. She was like Megan. Like, I have a real vision. Sit down. Like, we're gonna talk about it. I have this shit. It was so great. She got this vintage button that she found like years ago, and she was like, "This is kind of like the model. I want to do it. I want to do it vintage. I want to do it this. I want it to be, yeah." I love that. Yeah. And the packaging, she was just like, yes, we need to make it as like retro and like nice as possible. It was so fun to work with her.
that's amazing. Mel says, "Thank you for choosing my buttons at the Stitch Festival."
No problem. I love doing that, especially because it's hard when you don't have the fabric with you. Like that's one of the things I love about going to the festival. Like I love like actually putting it on the fabric. So yeah. Welcome.
Well, I think the good thing about some of your buttons as well is some of them are like slightly clear, so then they really like blend in with the fabric when you place it on. And you're like, is this going to go? And you put it on, and it just is perfect. That's what I found with that the ruffle blouse that I made recently.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like some people want the perfect kind of match, and some people kind of want it to stand out, and it's like just like different, like what you would want from it or what you're asking from it. But yeah.
Awesome. Let us know in the chat if you've got any questions for Meg. Right, let's talk about your stash, Meg. So how do you feel about your sewing stash?
So my stash, I'm looking around because it's around it's around me. I'm feeling pretty happy about my sewing stash at the moment. One of the big things I did just before I had when I was pregnant with Olimi and when I was just about to open my business is I had a big clear out and kind of just it was a clear out. I had a look at my fabric and I got rid of everything I didn't like because at that point I'd been sewing for around 5 years and I still had fabric that I had when I didn't know anything about fabric or I didn't know anything about sewing, and I was just buying fabric because I was slightly confused, and I was like, okay, I'll keep it around for a wearable toile. But one of the best things I did, and I would recommend this to everybody, is getting rid of the fabric that you don't actually like instead of keeping it for a wearable toile. I just got a big roll of calico and I just do a toile. I just do a toile. I do my adjustments. I make sure, it's rough. It's to get the great fit, and then I move on to the fabric I actually really love. So that helped me get rid of. I wouldn't say too much because I didn't have the biggest stash. So that helped me get rid of the things I would look at, and I was like, I don't really like that. When I started the fabric shop, I fell into that thing of taking fabric from the shop and putting it in my stash. But 5 years into the business, I realized that is unsustainable. And there will always be new fabric that I'm going to love. So I have fallen out of that. And I would say that I love my stash. I don't have as much time to sew as I would like. I think that is my problem, and I'm a slow sewist. But right now, my stash is filled with things I really love and really excite me. And I have plans for them, and I can get out any fabric and be like, I love this. Maybe I don't have the plan for it, but I know when it comes together. If anything, the problem is I love the fabric too much. I'm like, really? I'm like, it has to be the perfect project. But I have found that when I was making my wearable toiles, I would keep on trying to salvage them. Like if it was turning out wrong and it wasn't fitting me, instead of it like me being like, okay, it's just a toile, I would like I'll spend like more time on this thing, the fabric I didn't even like. Yes, I need to make adjustments on the pattern. Why am I stressing myself out? And by the time I'd finished that wearable toile, I didn't even want to do it on.
Then you just never sew the main fabric.
So right now, like my stash is varied. Like I still have the stuff I have before I started my fabric shop, and I still love that fabric. And I have a rule for myself that I sew one thing that I've had that's been in the stash, and then one new thing. So it's just not sewing new stuff, but also appreciate the stuff I got before. But yeah, I love my stash.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So are you working on anything right now?
Yes. Oh. So when I did that collaboration with Elaine, I started sewing jackets and coats, and I made a quilted jacket, but it was already like a large gingham, so I didn't actually do the piecing together and the quilting. So, and I love that coat. I wear that coat like it's I love it. It's my favorite thing. I wear it all the time. So I wanted to make a quilted jacket. So I am now quilting together little quilted bits, and this is the fabric that we did. Hey So Sister had printed with us, and yeah, here we go.
I'll put you full screen so you can show it. Here we go.
Yeah, so I'm just doing my little squares. I absolutely adore them. The pattern I used, it was Nina Lee. She did a blog post about how you turn the Bakerloo jacket into a quilted jacket. So you just do some simple drafting things like lengthening the armhole and stuff like that. So yeah, working on this. I started quilting, and I understand now why people love quilting. I understand it. I didn't get it before. I get it now.
You're gonna make a quilt next then?
Yeah, I am. I want to do a scrap. So one of the only thing I don't like about my stash is the things I've kept, like the leftover leftover fabric that is like too large that you feel like you can't throw it away, and too small to really do anything with. And even though I didn't think I was going to quilt anything, I still kept that. I still kept this
too much guilt, isn't it, to throw it away? There's like no good solution to get rid of it, because
no,
fabric recycling is like
yeah,
really expensive or not available. So then you're like, oh, I can't waste it, and then you just have it, and you're like, oh god.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to make. I don't know if you've seen on Instagram, like people have been making these really beautiful curtains, and they're like patchwork curtains.
Yeah,
really, yeah. So I have a plan, because the only problem about quilting, serious quilting, is that you have to buy more fabric, like quilting fabric. But I want to get rid of my scraps. But like I have to have like a real look at my scraps. That is the thing. That's the thing I can't bear to look at. When it comes to like the fabric I have, I honestly can't bear to look at the scraps. I have so many of them, and who is that pattern designer? She did like that bow dress, and she's doing these patchwork dresses.
Oh, I just want to say Robert's Wood.
Yes, yeah. So I've been looking at like Robert's Woods, and doing something from her, because some of the because they are dressmaking fabrics, so they won't really translate into a proper quilt. So yeah, definitely patchwork clothes, just patchwork.
Exciting. That's really cool. Mel says, do you do commissions for buttons if someone's got something specific?
No, we don't do commissions. It's just so busy. So it's still just me and my husband doing the team. Steph used to work with us. We love Steph from the rag shop, but she had to leave us, so it's literally just me and him. So yeah, commission it's too much to do commissions for us. Yeah.
You'll have to do a collab, Mel.
Yeah.
The Sorry Sews theme. Right, what else should I ask you? So do you shop from like other fabric shops, or do you still tend to mostly get stuff that you source?
I would say 90% now is what I source, but like every now and again, like for that project, I had to get the quilting pieces for in between. So I did get quilting fabric. We don't usually do that. And every now and then there would be, I think, Fabric Godmother, she does some really like I have fallen for some Fabric Godmother prints, because she has done some amazing, stunning prints recently. But I really have to like be like, Megan, we have a warehouse. Literally have a warehouse. It has to be something really special, or something I just can't get from our warehouse. And generally, yeah. So like, not to, yeah, 90% I get from us, but there will be like there will be like the odd thing that I'm like, okay, no, I just need to get it from somewhere else. And I'm not too mad about it, because I like supporting other fabric shops too. So
Do you enjoy being at the show and like actually seeing people in person, and being in the community?
it's really, really lovely doing the shows. It feels like a reunion, because you don't have any other work colleagues. It feels like a Christmas party, because we mostly do the knitting and stitching show. That's around October. And I will say the knitting and stitching show feels more like I don't know, like the Glastonbury, just because it's so isolated on like at Alexandra Palace.
That hill.
Yeah, like
Mel and I walked last year. We've got the tube, and then it was like, oh, it's just up just up the road. We'll walk, and then it's up the massive hill. Which, well, I was anyway. Mel was fine. I was really sweaty.
no, yeah, that hill. Like, I'm so glad whenever like how drives up of it, and I'm like, I know I should be walking, but I just cannot face that hill. Like, Yeah, but it's really like, so it was our first time doing the Stitch Festival, and that was nice in its own way as well. It is really like, because there's more newer businesses, like it's a different, like now we've done the knitting and stitching show, like I feel like there are people like we see every year, and it's like a reunion, where the Stitch Festival, it was like so many new businesses, and kind of like it was a bit more like, hi, but I really do love it. I really do love it. The only problem, not problem, but because I'm a knitter as well, there's more yarn at the knitting and stitching show. So generally, I buy a little bit more at the knitting and stitching show, because like we don't have yarn. But no, it's really lovely. I love seeing other businesses, and especially those in the same field, and having a chat, and this is this and this is that. That's nice.
So have you got a separate knitting stash as well then?
Oh, yes. The thing about the knitting stash is it takes me ages to knit. Like I only knit maybe 3 things a year, so I can kind of like control myself a little bit. And it's massive. Like by the time you buy a sweater quantity worth of yarn, it feels like wow. Like, you know, at least you know your fabric, you little fold it away, you put it in your little cubby hole, and who knows, you know, you can, you know, put 40 pieces in there and it doesn't look like much. But with yarn, it's just bulky. So I'm really strict with myself, and I'm really good with my knitting. Like right now I'm not on a no buying kind of like using what I have. Again, like the end of like when you have a project and you have those odd balls left, that's a little bit of a problem for knitting, especially because I get quite a few on cones, which is like cone. I have like maybe I think 3 or 4 like sweater quantities worth of yarn, which, you know, I could, if I just knit even quite slowly, I could use up in a year and a half. Do you know the thing? Yeah, I think we spoke about it before. What was it?
The what is it? Sable.
Yes. When you have stash, what is it? Stash.
Something like stash above life expectancy or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Like, so like, I don't know, for my fabric, I definitely. I'm just looking around, but I feel like if I sat down and really like sewed it, I could sew it in a year. For my knitting, again, like I I don't want to be, I just don't have the space, number one. I think maybe if I had the space, like it would be a new me. Um, but I really don't have the space. I do get quite expensive fabric and knitting. I did try cheaper yarn, but when it comes to wool, I really do need it to be like next to skin softness if I'm trying to find like another top to put underneath it so it's not itchy. So I'm really liking that.
It takes so long. It takes so long to knit something as well. You don't want to like spend like hours and hours and hours doing it, and then you don't like it because it's too itchy. You never wear it.
Yeah, and my main problem is sorry, I'm sweaty. I'm really sweaty. And this is why I sew as well, and this is why I knit. Like acrylic jumpers, I cannot wear acrylic jumpers or just like polyester or something. Like I just sweat like profusely. It's just like, it's one of those things where you're just like, you wear it for like 3-4 hours and it just needs to go in the wash because it's awful. So yeah, so I'm like kind of with my, I think when I first started, I would go for quite cheap things. And you know, it's still nice if you get something that's a bargain and stuff like that. But it's now not the top of my priority list. It's not like, okay, this is the cheapest. Okay, great. And then maybe the things I don't quite like about it, I'm like, I don't care. It's cheap, so you know, I kind of like it, so I'm gonna get it. I've been trying to be really kind of like thoughtful in my choices. Like even if I like something, even I'm like, am I really gonna sew something out of it? Am I really going to kind of like, what do I actually need? Like I sewed so many summer dresses, and I'm so glad I'm getting into sewing coats. Because
It's
actually
fun to Like you were saying just before we came on that it's really cold in your studio.
Freezing. And like the thing I used to love the most is like sewing summer. And it's funny because like in the summer, like I can never really do me made May because like it's just too cold. Like all I have like if it was me made August, like I'd be fine because like I have so many summer dresses. But I'm really trying to think what are the gaps in my wardrobe. Okay, yes, it's nice to sew something cute, it's just frivolous. You just like to kind of like wear in the summer, but now I really want my stash to be, something where I'm going to make my everyday wardrobe from it. So there's like definitely been a shift in how I shop, and that's kind of like echoed through with my stash where I'm not quite as I don't know. I think having a warehouse full of fabric as well, kind of like it's like there's always going to be more fabric. It's okay. Like it doesn't feel as urgent. It doesn't feel as oh, if I want to sew something, there's literally always going to be something, whether it's in the stash or in the warehouse. Like I feel a lot calmer when I'm making my choices.
Yeah. No, it sounds like you've got actually quite a lot of like self-control and very like mindful about your thinking as well. Because I've
Only
been
recently, like only recent, like well only halfway through my sewing journey,
well,
and I
you were
have a
saying like you're limited by the space, and like it definitely makes sense, and that is the way that you have to do it. But I don't think that everyone follows that because I've been watching that show, Sort Your Life Out with Stacey
oh, I
Solomon.
love yes.
I've got like
Yeah.
addicted to it. I don't really watch that sort of TV, but now I've got like really into it. And there was one where the woman sewed, she made costumes, and she had this like she just had her house was just full of stuff. She had like 800 fabrics, and her like sewing room was just so round with stuff you couldn't walk into it. So then she was sewing like on the sofa on a little like coffee table, and I was just like, no.
Oh,
And then they like made her such a nice sewing room, and it was like all so lovely at the end.
I
It's
have
such
to
a
find that
satisfying
one.
show if people haven't watched it.
It's a really good show. I think I only got into watching it because I started watching the interior design show, and it comes on straight after. And like me and my husband both watched it like the first time a couple of weeks ago, and it's a pretty good show. No, but I also, as I said, like I kind of sew for pleasure, and the space I sew in is also really important. So like I'm one of these people is that if I'm sewing, like I have to clear up beforehand and kind of like know where kind of everything is. I mean, I do have stuff, but I just want it to be like a nice welcoming space. So if it was just like rammed full of stuff, it just I think it would make me sew less, if anything. And the thing about my stash is change, which I don't think the size has necessarily changed, but it's the things I put into it. So once I got rid of all of the stuff I wasn't really keen on, it was like it slowly added the things that I was. And I don't know if you've done your colours.
I haven't done mine, but I do have a very specific color palette that I live in, and I'm afraid if I go, they'll be like, "No more cobalt blue for you," and I'll be like, "Absolutely not. That's not." They're like, "You must wear peach," and I'll be like, "No, thank you."
I know, to be fair, like when I first had my colours done, I was like, I refuse to believe I am a deep winter. Like I refuse.
Justine Joy's had hers done, and they said she's not an autumn, and she had a full stash of only autumn. So now
Oh,
she's destashing
I
everything.
know. Like I was one of the pets. So there was an app. It's like called Color Me. It's like free, and I did it through there. It's like has a little like one of those for pet, and it does your skin and your eyes. And it said I was a deep winter, and I was like, what does this app know? It's free. And then I met someone who she was like, I've just done my colours training. I will do your colours. And I was like, okay, great. It's going to be because I love everyone loves autumn, right? I love browns. I love mustards. I'm like, yeah, like I feel like I look good in it. But yeah, again, I'm a deep winter. And it's like a very corporate colours. It's like the black, greys, blue. I never thought I would look good in blues. I was always more of like I don't look good blues, that kind of thing. And I am now for the knitting at least, because like I feel like for knitting, because that takes so much time, I'm going to pay attention to my colors, and going forward with my stash, I am going to pick out the things that are in my color palette and then see how I feel.
Exciting.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to look. So on the app, it literally has like your colors just right there, so you can just like have a look and then see. And I think I'm going to do that going forward.
That's cool. Yeah, I feel like with the colors, it's more about like the tones than like the actual colors themselves in a way. Like, you know, you because I feel like with like blue especially, it's like a color like anyone can wear blue, but there's so many different shades of blue that some like different ones suit different people.
Yeah, and I think it's the shades as well that got to me, because it does feel really like, it's like, because you've heard the thing like not everyone can actually wear black. Well, obviously they can, but like like it's only like the deep winters that look the best in black. So that was interesting to kind of like have a look at. And I don't know, I'm gonna see, because you know, you don't really want people like to dictate your colors on you. But there was like, when she was draping it over me, I was like, yeah, I can see how this looks nice. And like, it's like, oh god, yeah, I can see that that does like bring out my eyes more and make me look less tired and things like that. And then I think the real draw to it is like everything that is in your wardrobe goes together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's funny, like it's such a like meme online, like of people having their colors done and they'll sit in one color like just I think it's like it is just their genuine reaction. Like they're just like, oh yeah, this is better.
Yeah, I wasn't as that dramatic. The one thing I was really shocked at was that gold doesn't look good. Like I just assumed people with brown black skin, gold was like the color you should go towards, but it was silver. And that was the only like where I was like, oh no, why does silver look so much better? But I think most of it was like, oh yeah, I am just, yeah, okay, the black, yeah, it does look good. Okay. This deep corporate blue, yeah. That's why.
Gonna have to get your corporate pantsuits and do
I
your the apprentice marching around. Oh man, amazing. Right, let's quickly do Mel's question before we wrap up. She says, have you made anything for your husband? And does he choose his own buttons?
Okay, so he like, when I first started sewing like 11 years ago, he asked me to sew him a shirt. And I was like, well, no, I don't even know how to sew. And he is still waiting on that shirt.
Oh,
I have knitted him something. I knitted him 2 hats. I've knit him some hats. I don't know why I'm so reluctant to sew something for him. I think it's because I knitted him a hat, and he tends to be more critical, you know. Like, so so my mum, I would sew my mum stuff. Like actually, my mum's easy, because sometimes I sew something I don't like it and I give it to her. But I would sew her a dress. Like I would sew her a dress. I've sewn her something specifically for her. I was like this will look good on you, and your wardrobe's looking not that great right now. And she's just so appreciative, and she like wears it and wears it and wears it. And I think my reluctance is that like, he's one of those people who's really just hard to get a gift from, because like you'll get him a gift and he'll be like, well, I didn't need that. And I was like, well, that's not the point, it's a gift. Like most gifts are just like, you don't really need it, but you know, do you want it?
yeah, like the thought and all that. It's not just
He's awful at like being given things. So like just me thinking of like sitting down and sewing him something, for him to just be like, yeah.
You just spend the whole time being like, gifts is not the love language. We could have had quality time, but I'm doing this instead.
I know, but what we are going to so because we've got a little photo shoot coming up and I'm just like too tired and pregnant to sew, we're gonna get someone to help with the sewing, and someone else is gonna make him a shirt. And you can fabric the buttons.
Oh, that's gonna be great.
And also he's gonna start going on a sewing course as well, so he can sew it himself.
Oh, you should make a series out of this.
I just hope he sticks with it. So if he does, we will capture some of him, learning how to sew, because he knows so much about fabric. He knows so much about, yeah, he's just like, he's so good at like knowledgeable about fabrics. It's crazy that he's not knows how to sew like even.
That's quite a big like advantage as well. I feel like that's one of the things that makes a lot of your projects fail early on, is that you don't know about fabric. So you're like, I don't know what a viscose twill is. Maybe I'll use quilting cotton, and then you make it.
Oh no, that's definitely, I think that is the reason why I had to get rid of a lot of stuff, is because you just didn't know, right? Like I did get like at the beginning, I didn't realize like what I didn't like about loads of the clothes I was buying in the shop was it was polyester. Like I know that sounds like I didn't know why I like to wear like this natural fiber, or how this feels to sew and wear. So yeah, it does feel like half the journey for him is like over.
Yeah, I feel like I was so ignorant about fabrics. Like I never even like looked at the labels. I was just like, the soft t-shirt, which is
Yes.
obviously viscose jersey, or like the sweaty t-shirt, the poly one. And now I feel like I'm such a snob about natural fibers. Like I'll go
Yeah.
into New Look and I'll be like, polyester, polyester, polyester.
I know. And like have a look, especially when it's some of the kind of like more higher end ones. Monsoon. Like I'm really surprised at Monsoon. Like I'll have a look and they'll have a dress that's like almost £100 and it's like 100% poly. Or I don't get it when the lining is polyester and then the out, and I'm like, come on now.
The lining's the part that you need to
be closest to you. So yeah, that's definitely helped with my style, like knowing what fiber you like, and to sew with. Like some things I know I'm not going to sew. I like to sew with them, so I will just buy them. But that mostly comes with jumpers and stuff like that. But no, it's nice to know.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Well, I should probably wrap it up there, but thank you so much for joining us, Meg. I was just saying Mel because I felt like I've been trying to Mel half the conversation as well. But thanks for joining us, Mel, as well. Have you got anything else you want to say, Meg, before we just head off?
No, thank you for everyone who listened. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, find us at Pigeon Wishes shops on Instagram. We have an Etsy shop, also Pigeon Wishes shops. And yeah, thank you.
Is your new website live yet? Is it
not yet? We are. That's coming soon. Hopefully by the end of the month. But
exciting.
there's some setbacks.
That's just running your own business for you, isn't it? But yeah, I'll put all the links to Pigeon Wishes in the description. This is going to be available on YouTube afterwards as well. So hello to everyone who's watching on catch up. But yeah, hopefully everyone's joined it. Sorry, I've just lost my brain now. But hopefully everyone's enjoyed joining in. And yeah, thank you everyone. And I'm going to be back next week, but on Thursday instead of the usual Wednesday. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And we've got another super exciting guest next week. Bye.